What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Breakout. As always, I am your host, Robby Stanley. You can find me on Twitter at rstanleyNHL. And if you want to share or subscribe this YouTube video or this YouTube channel, it would be very much appreciated. Going to talk a little bit of Nashville Predators hockey today. Hard to believe they're starting up again here in a couple weeks in training camp. It feels like they just left a few weeks back after the Stanley Cup final was over against the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's firing up again. It's hockey time again in Nashville, and people are getting excited about it, probably more so than ever before, given what the Predators were able to accomplish last year. So I asked a few of you on Twitter to reach out to me and see if you had any questions heading into Predators training camp, and some of you got back, and I'm going to read some of those off here in this episode, as well as kind of talk about some areas I see as points of emphasis for the Predators heading into training camp. So we'll start with Andrew on Twitter. Wanted to know what the deal is with Mika Salomaki. I think it's going to be difficult for Salomaki to find a lot of playing time with this Predators team this year. Just a tough season last year for Salomaki. Got hurt in the second game against Chicago and was really trying to catch a moving train after that. He was hurt the majority of the year, got in toward the end of the regular season, but at that point the Predators had really already established an identity for themselves, and it's tough to throw a guy in that's missed so many games all the way throughout the regular season. So I think you saw a guy like Austin Watson really kind of step in and fill Salomaki's role last year that had been expected to be his role heading into the season. I mean, people forget Austin Watson didn't make the team out of training camp last year, was recalled from Milwaukee, stepped in and really did a good job and allowed the Predators to leave him in the lineup and make sure that they trusted him. He played the best hockey of his career, and I think that really was a detriment to Mika Salomaki in the playing time that he wanted to get for the Predators when he did get healthy and he returned to the lineup. So I think it's going to be difficult for Salomaki again this year to find much playing time just because of the youth and the skill the Predators have now in their forward groups. I mean, you think about Pontus Aberg potentially fitting in this year, maybe Freddie Gaudreau as well as Kevin Fiala and Colton Sissons and some of the younger players they had stepped to the forefront in the playoffs last year. I just think it's going to be really difficult for Mika Salomaki to have a pretty big role and find a lot of playing time with this Predators team. So, secondly, Brian wanted to know about Eeli Tolvanen. Really dynamic forward for this Predators team. I think in a couple years he's going to be a good player for the Predators. I still think he's probably a year or two away from making the NHL roster, but there's no question I was really impressed with him at Predators development camp. He was a first-round pick, 30th overall by the Predators this last year. Has a really nice wrist shot, very good release, one of the best pure goal scorers in the entire draft, and it was kind of mind-boggling to a lot of experts, myself included, when he fell to 30th overall in the draft. You just take a look at his wrist shot, his offensive instincts, his awareness on the ice. I think he's going to be a really good player for the Predators. I think he'll factor into their top six group one day. You just take a look. He's not the biggest guy, but I think we're starting to learn in today's NHL you don't have to be. I mean, Victor Arvidsson comes to mind with the season he had last year, scored over 30 goals, really fast, really dynamic. I think Tolvanen has a lot of those same attributes. I don't think he's quite as fast as Arvidsson is, but his wrist shot is very, very good. That's going to be a weapon. We saw him use it the other day in the KHL where he got a hat trick. Really impressive for an 18-year-old kid to do that. So I think the future is extremely bright for Eeli Tolvanen. And if you take a look at the way the Predators have drafted and developed forwards over the last 2 or 3 years, they've gotten much better in that area. And that was a struggle for them early on in their franchise. They weren't able to draft and develop at a high level those really skilled forwards. I think they're getting a lot better at that. That's been much more of a point of emphasis for them since Peter Laviolette took over as head coach, and I think Tolvanen is going to end up being a really good player for this team. Ken on Twitter asked about the impact of spending to the salary cap, and you take a look at the Predators, they're about $5.5, $6 million away from the salary cap. I think they're in a really good position heading into this year, and you take a look at the way the Predators have structured their roster over the course of the past few years. They're really banking on guys early on. I mean, you take a look at Roman Josi. He was given a 7-year deal, probably before he deserved that kind of long-term financial security. But David Poile has done something where I think a lot of general managers are going to start to copycat as the years go on. He's banking on these younger players forward that he feels like has a lot of potential, and it's worked out for him so far. Roman Josi is getting paid $4 million a year. I mean, that's a pretty crazy number. I mean, just think about if Roman Josi was on the open market right now, how much money he would be worth. In my opinion, he'd be worth $7-8 million a year, and he's getting paid $4 million a year because he was offered a contract so early on in his career. Similar with Matthias Ekholm and Ryan Ellis. I think from a salary cap standpoint, they're in really good shape right now. You take a look at Victor Arvidsson as well. Has 1 year where he scores 30 goals, and the Predators give him a 7-year deal, obviously banking on the fact that he's going to be able to continue to produce at that level and maybe even build on that production as well. So I think from a salary cap perspective, the Predators are in really good shape, at least for now. I think in a couple years that may be a problem for them because you're going to have contracts like Ellis and Yossi and Ekholm eventually all start to come up, and that's when the Predators are going to have to make some decisions. But I think right now they're in really good shape. Even this year, you take a look at the salary cap space they do have if they don't make any more moves heading into the season. I mean, you got a piece, or you got enough room there to potentially add a piece at the trading deadline should you choose to do so, whether that's a forward, which I think in all likelihood that's what it would be, or if it's another defenseman, if you're just kind of riddled by injuries on defense, maybe they have enough room to go out and get another defenseman now as well. So I think they're in great shape from a salary cap perspective, especially heading into this year. I think they're going to be pretty competitive anyway, but if they feel like they need to add another guy or two, I think they'll be able to do that. So I appreciate you guys reaching out on Twitter and asking questions. As I said before, I mean, I want this to be a show where you guys interact with me, where we talk about things that you want to talk about. So as far as my expectations and my storylines heading into Predators training camp, and just a couple things I'm looking for. Number one, the health of Kevin Fiala. I think that's going to be critical for this team, especially early on this year. I mean, we talked about in the past about losing James Neal to the expansion draft. Where is that offense going to be replaced? And even Mike Fisher, he didn't have a lot of production in the playoffs, but he put up more than 40 points last year in the regular season. The Predators are going to have to find a way to replace the offense that's left behind with those two guys and Colin Wilson as well. So I think Kevin Fiala's health heading into training camp, that's going to be my number one storyline. Is he healthy? Is he fully recovered from that broken leg he suffered in the playoffs last year? Because he's going to be a guy that when he's fully healthy is probably going to play in the top 6 group for the Predators. He's probably going to be the main guy they rely on to replace that offense left behind by James Neal. Another one is Nick Bonino. I mean, he's going to step in and presumably be the second-line center for this Predators team. Can he handle that role? I mean, he's played that role before. Was behind Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin in Pittsburgh. Obviously a lesser role when you're behind two future Hall of Famers like that. I think he's going to get more of an opportunity here in Nashville, maybe even some power play time. Can he handle that second-line center role? You just take a look at the Predators group they had heading into last year. I mean, it was Ryan Johansson, Mike Ribeiro, Mike Fisher, and Calle Jarnkrok primarily as your centers. Obviously, that changed a little as last season moved on. Mike Ribeiro was shipped out to Milwaukee. You had Colton Sissons step in and fill a bigger role, particularly in the playoffs. So I think the Predators are in better shape from a center perspective heading into this season than they were heading into last year. But it's still a pretty big question mark to me if Nick Bonino can step in and fill that second line center role. So I'm interested to see if he can do that. And the other one is Scott Hartnell. I mean, had a down year last year by his standards in Columbus. Can he step in and be more productive offensively for the Predators? I think he can. I think he's going to get a lot more opportunity, particularly on the power play with the Predators. He's a guy they really haven't had since Patrick Hornquist left this team, a guy that stands in front of the net, does that dirty work. That's what he did when he started his NHL career in Nashville. That's what he's done his entire career. That's what the Predators need him to do on the power play this year. So not a whole lot of question marks on this Predators team heading into training camp. I think they're going to be pretty solid, especially if they remain healthy. I think the chemistry they built last year, you're going to see earlier effects to that this season than you did a season ago. Remember, it took them a long time to really hit their stride last year in the regular season. They were the last team to get into the playoffs. I think you're going to see a much heavier emphasis this year on the regular season. Ryan Ellis talked about it after the Stanley Cup final. They got to fight for home ice advantage. You can't rely on starting every playoff series on the road and getting to the Stanley Cup final like they did a year ago. It's nice, especially if you're the Predators, to have home ice advantage. I think it means more to the Predators than it does to some other teams around the league, just because they feed off that crowd and the energy in that building and outside that building as well. You can just see it and feel it in the playoffs, how important it was to them. So those are my thoughts on the Predators heading into training camp. What are your guys' thoughts? Let me know either in the comments section below or on Twitter. Again, I'm at @RStanleyNHL on Twitter, and you can find me on there. I appreciate you guys watching. Hope you guys have a really good weekend, and I'll see you soon.